When looking at the anime seasonal lineup, there usually is a huge portion of it dedicated to just isekais. The same going for light novels, manga, and other mediums out there. So, what makes isekai so popular to begin with? To even understand why and how isekai became so popular that it is practically mandated that there are at least 3 isekai each season, it is important to know what exactly is an isekai. An isekai is a Japanese genre where the protagonist is transported to a different world. There are a few common story beats that you can use to identify an isekai. The first, and unsurprisingly, is transportation to another world. No matter what, an isekai requires that the main character be transported to a different world. If they aren't, it just becomes shitty urban fantasy. While the transportation is a requirement, the way that this happens is up to the author. Common ways for protagonists to be transported are summoning or reincarnation. However, authors are coming up with more convoluted ways of teleporting their characters. Now, unsurprisingly, if your character is going to be transported, they have to be transported to a different world. The most common setting for this new world is a fantasy setting that totally isn't a ripoff of Middle-earth, guys. Why would you ever think that? While Middle-earth is the most popular place to send your protagonist to, theoretically you could easily send your protagonist to any setting you wanted to. For example, you could send your protagonist to a sci-fi setting where they try and adapt to a world that is way more advanced than their own. It is also common to do reverse isekais, where people from another world are dropped into our world. And finally, the icing on top of the cake is the protagonist. An isekai doesn't really require the protagonist to fit any kind of predetermined mold. This allows the author to create a compelling protagonist that has their own motivations, where the author can take this protagonist and see how this isekai setting affects this character. And... oh great, they're boring. Yeah, the unfortunate truth is that a lot of isekai protagonists have little to no personality, because usually they want their viewer to imagine themselves as a protagonist. Which is a crying shame because there are a lot of isekai that have good premises, but fall flat because their protagonist is stellar than cardboard. Also, due to the nature of isekai, it is fairly common for the protagonist's appearance to change as well. And for some reason it has become a trend where the protagonist is transformed into something that isn't really human. For example, a slime, bending machine, monster girl, or whatever else the author can think of. Now, it is also important to understand where isekai even comes from. The very concept of isekai comes from the Japanese folktale Arishimataro, where the fisherman Arishimataro saves the turtle and is brought to an undersea kingdom for a couple of days. But when he gets homesick and he goes back home, he finds out that 300 years have passed him by. The story holds a lot of story beats similar to modern isekai, in that it includes a person being transported to practically a different world. The only thing that is different from most modern story is that he really isn't transported to a different world, and there isn't really a lot of JRPG elements which a lot of modern isekai have. Before isekai really became a thing in Japanese literature, Western literature was doing it long before isekai really became a thing. However, it was recognized as portal fantasy, and these stories include Alice's Adventure in Wonderland, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and The Chronicles of Narnia, to name a few. Now we come to a time period where classical isekai began to come around. However, they weren't really known as isekai back then. as around the 1970s and early 1980s, the first works that could be recognized as isekai were the novels Warrior to Another World and the anime Ora Ballad Dunbindi. I hope that sounds correct. I can't really pronounce what the heck that is. Isekai began to pick up steam after these stories came out, with more classical isekai in the years coming out in the decades after these, which include the 12 Kingdoms, Now and Then, Here and There, and Digimon Adventures. God, I remember that. Most isekai during this time period were targeted towards shoujo, or the young girl demographic of Japan. This was done by having most of the protagonists be females who were swept off into a fantastical world, finding romance usually in the process. Stories like this include Fushiyugi, From Far Away, Red River, The Vision of Eskerfloon, Magical Knight Rayearth, and probably every teenage girl who was into anime during the early 2000s could remember Inuyasha. And for most of the time period, that was the isekai genre. However, one movie managed to put isekai on the global radar, which was, easily enough, Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli. Yeah, I think I said that right. Now, however, in 2012, one work caused isekai to skyrocket and morph into the genre that we all know today. Now, what work could cause this genre to surge in popularity? You're kidding me. It was Sword Art Online. SAO. It was that SAO that caused isekai to skyrocket in popularity. Alright. This sudden skyrocket in popularity caused more isekai to come out in the years following SAO, such as ReZero, No Game No Life, Rising of the Shield Hero, Yojo Senki, Overlord, Konosuba, The Slime Isekai, My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom, and Shoko Tensei, to name a few. From 2012 onward, isekai changed from being geared towards young girls, towards young men, with the protagonists being, well, young men. The worlds that they were transported to also changed, as while they're still fantastical in nature, a lot of them began to gain game-like elements such as levels and skills. Now, this may have happened due to how much success Japan had with JRPGs, so maybe a lot of authors used elements from these games to make their isekai more popular. Now, from this time, isekai have gone under a minor revolution. During this time, there was a mini revolution of isekais, as due to the popularity of isekais, there came more isekais that were genre subversions and meta commentary on the isekai genre. However, these isekais eventually surpassed the original isekai in popularity, so somehow it became more subverting to do an actual isekai, and we're back to where the isekai genre began. There are a few reasons why isekai are so popular among their audiences and for studios and authors to make them. And the first couple reasons for isekai to become so popular is probably wish fulfillment and escapism. Probably the biggest reason why people like isekai in the first place is the wish fulfillment part of them. Many isekai are based off the idea of a second chance at life, as after the protagonist dies to some runaway truck, they are given a second chance at life with the knowledge that they had from their first life. Now you may be wondering, how is that wish fulfillment, as the protagonist isn't the reader, right? However, you would be wrong, as a lot of isekai protagonists are written with the bare minimum of a personality. So, the reader can live out their wish fulfillment through the reader insert. Probably the biggest reason why I like watching isekai is the world building aspect of them, as I love learning about the different races that make this world their home, how their world works, and sometimes I even like watching the politics of that world, even though it really isn't my cup of tea. I also like seeing the protagonists interacting with this new world. Do they try and change the world around them, or are they changed by a world themselves? In essence, I think one of the strongest parts of an isekai is the world building. Now, why do animation studios like producing isekai? Well, one word: money. Isekai is a popular genre that a lot of people will keep on watching, no matter how bad the plot becomes. And so, a lot of animation studios just like producing them since it's a guaranteed buck. However, I think mangaka and authors simply like the genre because it's fun to write. As what other genre would allow you to make a story about a vending machine? And whatever zany plot they may come up with. Isekai provides an endless source of possibilities for a story, and due to the way that isekai are defined, the genre practically writes itself for the author. Overall, I think that no matter your opinion on the genre of isekai, they are here to stay for the long run. Thank you for listening to me go on a somewhat coherent rant about isekai. Please leave a like, subscribe, or comment if you found this video interesting, or leave a comment on what I could do better. Bye and have a good day.